Vue is help us create environments, and terrains, one of the biggest piece of these environments when you're creating. Vue come with 4 different type of terrains. It's a standard terrain, procedural terrain, spherical terrain, and infinity terrain. The difference is the standard terrain, it is creating and render terrain, but it is preset. So when you start creating, it's create algorithms and generating this high field kind of map and preset this terrain. So next, resolutions does not change if we come closer, shape does not change if we do not modify it. So it still be kind of preset this way. Think about this, it's a one-time snapshot and it stay in that shape. Of course you can modify it, but overall this is what's going. So we have it in infinity, actually procedural terrain, and that terrain, it does create it kind of preset, but it does not base it on one-time sculpting. It's actually have it functions inside that is modifying and driving. Its will hold is shape if you do not modify to the original creating, and it's based on a seed number and functions use it. However, resolution would change, and you can see very well right here it's showing the higher resolution the closer to the camera, medium resolution, and low resolution if it's far away. It will save some time on what details you want provided. And of course, if we take camera and move closer to our scenery, it will increase details to infinity because it's using fractal functions. And the closer you're getting, the more details it can produce. That is very nice if you're creating close-up or you don't know position for your camera. However, it does take additional CPU time when you render to set proper resolution. And other withdraw with this, even it's hold its shape, but remember, if you don't move camera closer, it's need to render those details. So it means shape may change on very insignificant differences, but it will re-render. And also, it's a little bit harder to give it precise shape you want it for the procedure terrain. For example, if I want to have it some specific peak somewhere, I can go and work with a standard terrain. We'll look in a second how to do this. A little bit easier, or if I want to put a DMM map. If I want to do with procedurals, I need to do through the function editors a little bit different ways and combine it's a little bit more complex how to do this. However, it is doable, but it's much harder. So also infinity terrain, think about the procedural terrain, only that applied from any point to any point. As long as you move camera, it's the same things. It will recalculate and regenerate those terrains based on your camera position, and it will go to as long as clipping occurred on a camera. Spherical, and it's where you create planets. You cannot access from this side, but you need to go inside the units, and right here you can notice we have a spherical and a planetary. That is a little bit different because if you use planetary, it's take your infinity terrain and it's actually map it or lay it around sphere, so it's a little more like a planet will be. Again, this resolution can be increased, decreased based on a camera position, but it will be applied to the spherical position instead of the flat infinity. So let's look closer. And some of the properties for the infinity or for the procedure or standard terrain is same. We'll start with standard terrain. It's have some little bit less options. And you can create 2 ways. One, you can go to your left navigation. You can select from here standard, procedural, or preloaded. Or you can always go to object, create, and right here you have it procedural terrain. You have it, high field and procedural terrain. So in high field you have it standard, symmetrical, so it's going up and down like floating islands, skin only, so it's one display on the bottom, and symmetrical skin high field. You also can open directly an editor. And if you select this, the option will pop up that asks you for terrain width and terrain height. This is the resolution of the terrain, and resolution apply only will be to the standard. The reason is why, because it's creating that resolution first time when you're generating. With a procedural terrain, because it easily render resolution depend on a position of the camera, that will be irrelevant. However, you will have some of the size and width, but this will apply mostly to the preview. So when you want high resolution preview, see more details, you can increasing. So I won't do this right now, but I will also show you how to modify this inside. So we'll go and we'll select standard terrain. So right here we open our terrain, is pre-generated, and we right click and go to edit object. We can also, by double tap clicking on the object itself, open our terrain editor. You also notice on the position top bar, it's will our global properties or view properties. Our left, it's our preset kind of modify, help us preloaded some properties we can manipulate with general shapes. We have altitude or mapping, clipping area, and how we represent the preview also. And our tabs on our right side, we have different effects we can apply to our terrain. We can paint materials, and apply additional effects. When we use the with procedurals, most of this will be same, except we'll have a few more tabs, and also some properties won't be available for us on our side. So let's go first and go from the top. Right here, you'll notice we have our terrain, and you can right click on your mouse, hold it, and it will allow you to rotate. You also have a property to use it control key or a command and use your mouse to zoom in and out. You also, if you hold shift button and right click, you can pan around your terrain. So this is just simple view adjustments. Also, you notice this window does not have an OK or close button like other ones. This is help you to identify this is a docking, so you don't necessarily need to open and close all the time. If you have multi-monitors, you can move it on different interface. Or if you enable docking in your environment, the currently I disable this, when you start moving, you will see its appear area, so you can add as additional tab if you need it for terrain editor. Personally, I find out I like to work with more details, so I actually scale as maximum I can, and I work this way. It's provided me a little bit better access. Again, right here, you notice when we created by default, it's create 256 by 256 resolution. And as a result, you can actually see pixelizations right here. So it's meaning if we bring this camera close enough, we can see some of those areas of the pixels. You can increase resolution. And for example, let's just increase by 1024. You can see now we have more distinguished pixelization. We can reset, recreating, which is will create with high resolution of fractal applied, and you can see how it's different now. We obviously have more details on this, on our terrain. So first we have it create new, we have it save terrain, we can export terrain as a height map or objects. We can also have additional terrain options. This similar as before, if you saw when we have an object created. Create symmetrical. So in this case, we have this type of floating island you can creating. And you know, if you play with the altitudes, cut down, you can actually create like these floating islands. Okay. Next, we also have options to create, let's uncheck this skin only. And this is applied when we start molding in 3D. You have its standards and procedures, so you can still switch at any time. And for example, if we have procedural switch on this, you'll notice right here, now we have our procedural parameter here, zones and effect. But when you work with the function editors, be careful because it will reset this terrain as you see. So you can modify, have some abilities, but overall you can switch between and forward them, but it will affect some shapes. So I'm going to switch back to the standard terrain right now, what we have before. Okay, we also have options when we can view. If you click, it will center and position all of our views. Top view, okay, which is you can modify. We also have an ability to show entire scene. And right now, because we have just the camera, we can see the camera here. And many times you probably want to use it if you have a building and you want maybe build terrain around the building or hill or maybe bridge and build properly river. In this case, you can enable to view some of the elements that you import to your terrain and use these options to modify it. We also have options to apply it and view grids if you have it, or specular lighting. Specular lighting sometimes help to see better highlights. Personally, I find this is a little bit more distracting, so I'm removing this. And also you have it showing if any texture is applied, you can preview. The texture does help if you're using any additional image mapping for the textures or altitude or maybe some other precision driving effect you want to see on materials, how distributed. So you can look on this and edit it this way. We also have a type of the showing clipping plane. And you notice when we created, first I created islands on the bottom, we kind of cut off by doing this. This has allowed us clip lower and higher altitude, like right here, but sometimes you cannot see it. So by enabling this, we can see this is clipping area. So you can see how we can modify those panels, shrink them, applied. The clipping panels also allowed us to view areas that we can apply only effect to these areas. For example, right here you can see it says constraint to clipping areas. So we can enable this, maybe bring even down. So you can see we will apply just only to this area. We can go as example to effect and click on diffuse, and you can see this will apply just only to the area we selected. By the way, some of these buttons you can click once, or you can click and hold, and it will continue applying more and more. And now you can see we applied diffuse just to this select area. But be sure you deselect or remove it before you click or close editors, because like right here in the preview, you can see the clipping area actually apply in our render to cut off that terrain. So for this, when I'm done, I want to remove it, my clipping area, which is changed, and will recreate full terrain that I want to use it. And we can uncheck showing clipping areas this time. So it does help. And then also clipping area may help you to mold it. For example, if I don't want to touch lower areas, I can set clipping area and just work with the brush preset tools on a specific area that I want to be affected. Okay, next we have it also copy, paste. We can zoom in, zoom out. You can do same things with your mouse wheel. If you have a wheel on your mouse or on a magic mouse, you can have it a middle scroll. Okay, next we have the resolution. And currently we kind of look on this resolution. And for the standard terrain is important because it will provide how many pixels it will create it. And if you work with some imported high field maps, that will become quite a bit useful. And we'll look this in a second when we start importing those. Okay, next we also have the resize terrain, and this does help you. So you have it current size, or you can have it symmetrical, not symmetrical, and crop altitude. So it's just allowed you done this a little bit easy way by pressing in numbers. Okay, we also have an equalize type. So it's allowed us to take all this, we apply the effects and equalize, increase in values. We also can invert. So in this case, we can create a lake very fast way as well. Okay. Okay, so next we have an apply function. And this function or a filter can be, apply filter, it's can apply to our altitude. So example, we can just double time click. Let's select stairs. And you can see right here, we build almost like stairs with our function. You can create a very interesting effect. Again, this function will apply on top or other effects. So this is not just one time. This is when we change, it will apply to this. So if you increase, decrease, you can see right here, it's kind of reapplied. So let's go ahead. We'll go create a new. Okay, let's go create our filter because we just set new ones and it's reset. So we can go, actually, let's go select this one. Click OK, and you can see how it's modified now with using our filters. Okay, next we have options to add a function to our terrain. And the same things, we can modify or create different type of action, filter how this action will affect different altitudes, on what altitude overall add, and even to the standard terrain we can apply this porcupine effect. Okay, so it's just as example again. One thing, don't think when you create like this effect or something unusual effect, don't discard instantly. For example, if it's created right now, I look on this and to me it's maybe look like distance forest. So I know this will render much faster than render plants. So it's meaning I can create something similar on far away mountains and it will look to me like a far away forest. Okay, so let's go ahead and reset this. Well, again, create new one. And this is options. You get more familiar or we start working on a project with using this specifically. So for example, we're using filters when we're creating those rice fields on the mountains, and it's again in other tutorials. And if you're interested in this, I do recommend for you check our epic landscapes tutorials where we take project each and we work with all the components to build a scenery. So it's help you kind of memorize a little bit better of these properties. So next we have a topology, and this is applied mostly if we do with 3D kind of molding. Like right here we create size and you'll see the pixels start stretching. So we needed putting those polygons properly mapped to different shapes. On this case we will use the topology to stretch to properly placement the polygons. Okay, and next we have an option extend terrain canvas, and this will work mostly for the procedurals. We'll see right now disable. We can force it 2D. If we enable it, will says additional 3D, and we can also work with procedural material preview. So those ones options will work a little bit more look in our procedure terrain. So on our left side, you'll notice right here we have the reset sculpting. We already used this a few times. We also have 2 zero edges. So let's go create mountain, and you notice, like for example, right here 0 edges. It's kind of smoothed around. When we create procedure terrain by default won't have it edges. So by enabling, disabling this allowed us kind of smooth and give it this to 0 edge blending. And many times you probably want to use this when you want to put together mountains. And you'll notice when you create, we maybe create different mountains, different type terrains, and we'll just start stitching them together. Okay, so next we use it one, create mountain. Next it's create peaks, and this is actually one of my favorite functions. So let's go look, create peaks. You can see it's create very interesting young type of look mountains and this kind of peaks. Okay, we also have it eroded effect. Okay, we have it create kind of like a canyon on steps, what we did with the filters previously. We also have it mount. The next we have it ability to create dunes. Okay, so let's go create this way. And again, you notice our resolution when we're creating a little bit lower. So if we increase our resolution, okay, and let's create dunes so we can see a little bit better them, you can see how we have this very interesting effect applied as well, okay, with the dunes. Okay, next we have an iceberg. Okay, and we have it with craters and moon. One thing about all these presets, you can combine them. So I can create canyon, I can add dunes to the canyon, and I can add also craters more. And you can always just add more and more to this, and you can see how it will affect. So you can stack the effect to your terrain and play around with these presets. So the next one we have it pictures, and this way if you have a DMM map or you have it any other map, like I'm using World Machine and many times to recreate it, we can load it. So let's go ahead, select. You can see it's come up with open import terrain data. So I'm going to click and preloaded. Right here I have some recent ones that I used before, and some of them is different resolution. The resolution in this case is kind of become important. So if I have it snow height, let me go select this, and I click OK. You can see we have a very nice terrain, but remember now we start having this pixelization. And this map is higher map. So the map is actually over 2000 pixels by 2000 pixels. And we can see this resolution, does not give it, it's look too grainy. So you want to at least match the resolution of your terrain. So I'm going increase in it. I'm increasing here afterwards, but you can see it's give it a little bit sharper, but still all this pixelization. And the reason, because when we loaded map, it was applied to high field already at this point. So if I reset it and I'm going back and I'm going to select the same map, the high field one. Okay, let's click OK. Now you can see how high resolution it is, because now we have it more pixels applied. However, this will increase amount of polygons when we're using. It will take, when we work with the OpenGL with your preview, because more polygons, the slow render will be going. Yeah, so be careful when you use it. But sometimes if you want to have a very high resolution or a large terrain, you can use this. And again, in this point, remember you can have it apply 0 edges if you want it. So it will just take and smooth. Of course, it will reduce some of that. Okay, here's one thing. But what if you have a high resolution? So if we're going, okay, let me go to edit this terrain again. Okay, if we go right here, we go to reset our terrain, and I'm going to increase by 4000. So I actually have a map for this that is help me, and we'll go to select right here. This is 4000 pixels, very high map, and you can notice it's take a little bit longer time to load it. And look on these details on this map. So you can see it's quite a bit high resolution, a little bit stretching right here, and this is problem with any high map versus procedural, because we have only one view, we don't have a side view. So whatever height is going, these size Z ones, they will be stretching, so we'll have stretch problems. This way you can fix it by applying additional function that will help add details to this. Or we also can take an overall reduce height of this, just shrink a little bit down. But overall with high field you will have a problem with stretching right in these areas. Okay, so let's go ahead and look on some additional properties or the configurations and options in next portion of the tutorial.